It's just going to make sense.
Thank you. Just for the benefit of members of the public, please, this meeting's Planning and Environment Committee, this evening's Planning and Environment Committee, is going to be recorded and is likely to be broadcast live on the internet. Posters have been positioned outside and inside the building. Should a member of the public not wish to be filmed, please can I ask you to position yourself behind the cameras. It looks like everybody is behind the cameras. If the person undertaking the film can just make sure that they don't move about in the meeting so as not to disturb the meeting. Filming, photography or audio recording should not be disruptive and distracting. No flash or additional lighting is permitted. No oral commentary will be permitted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now we'll begin the meeting. I have to announce one slight change. Item 2, which is one I know is of course considerable amount of interest, the town centre paving slabs, tarmac, stroke tarmac. Shane Bartlett wants to speak on this. He's coming from East Dorset. We'll push it down the agenda. If it hasn't turned up by the time we get to 6, 7, then we'll have to take it. But it gives him a chance to get over it on the other side. Okay, we'll start with apologies.
We haven't received any apologies for absence, just that Councillor Bartlett will be running late this evening, but is hoping to join us before the meeting closes.
Right, number 3 then, the Red Cross Lane and the request for traffic signs. We had an email from Diane, Councillor, Mrs. March, I should say, about the need for, well, her, she and I think several others too, the need for some signing on Red Cross Lane, which is a very busy little road that takes everybody from walkers, dog walkers, people with pushchairs, people with bikes, cars, lorries, you name it, it goes up and down Red Cross Lane. Diane, do you wish to sort of say something about this?
Well, a lot of this came about by a resident who I had spoken to, and he had said he was coming along to the meetings, right, but he hasn't come. But it has really come about from the point of view, if you come into if you come down Red Cross Lane, where the thing is, a car can come along West Street and not slow down really, and they'll just turn in sometimes, and you'll walk right on the corner sometimes and slam the brakes on, oh dear, there's somebody walking down there. Or otherwise, you get the people coming out of the bank car park quickly, don't come out slowly. And the Tivoli are one of the worst people apparently, especially if people are going in and out, if they're helping and they're late or they want to get away early. But the school children, we have dogs, we have push chairs, you name it, walk along there. And it is a narrow road. So I would like a request, perhaps if you could have a slow sign, 5-10 miles an hour, and also another sign just specifying that, there are a lot of road walkers, things like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're indicating.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Chairman, that I go up and down that lane, I suppose, 5 out of 7 days a week, and it is a very busy little lane. There are a lot of course, there are those flats with the nursed flats along there as well, and a lot of aged elderly people are in those. And it's not always possible for them to sort of dodge out of the way. You get the high-speed grannies in their carts as well. There is a lot of traffic up and down there, and I completely concur with this idea that we ought to have something done about it. It's a very, very narrow road.
Right, Carol?
Yeah, I think I support the comments. I think also it's the main cut through from the car park, the small car park, so we get a lot of pedestrians using that. So.
I was going to say that you've also got the Scout Hut, which is also used as a sort of crash nursery at the end as well. And the traffic can't see you as it's coming in.
Anybody else? Oh, I think we've got a pretty unanimous decision coming along. Anybody want to make a proposal?
Can I make the proposal then, along the lines of what I have written down here?
Yes, so we will look for the most appropriate signing to make it a safer place. I do particularly your point of when people are coming down West Street and they turn to go in there, because I have done that many times. You face the car turning in as you're trying to walk out. Yeah, not happy. So we need to find appropriate signing to make it safer both for people who walk and people who drive. You're happy with that? We'll talk to the county highways people. Maybe something's written on the road itself.
Unfortunately, they don't read those because they don't read the 20 along West Street.
Well, I'm afraid there's nothing to do about the public's lack of reading, but we can only try, can't we?
I'll second the motion, Chair.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, so anybody's going to second Diane? Loads of people.
Okay.
Are those in favour? Okay, that's everybody, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. You're on item 4, which you've got a... Oh, yes, you're right. Thank you very much, Holly. Member of the public. I thought you might like to speak as each item that you want to
Okay,
mention.
yes, fine, fine.
Yeah, you have got a time limit of 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you.
You don't have to take 3 minutes, you can take half a minute.
Thank you. Speaking of 4 and 5, I'm combining the two because there are 1 or 2 things I wanted to raise. Does that mean I get 6 minutes for 2 items? Anyway, Wimborne residents are concerned there's a lack of planning for the future of Wimborne Town Centre. To this end, Wimborne Residents Action Group has applied to make the first school and Pippins as a community asset. This has been done as we believe that Pippins can be used as a transport hub and the first school could be used for community use and free up some land for much needed additional parking spaces. The EIA has been presented to Wimborne Town Council. I believe you've had this presentation. And it would be nice to know if actually the Wimborne Town Council will support the RAG idea. Also, in addition, Friends of Wimborne Library are doing the same thing for the library. One of the concerns is that with the new authority coming in May, there are going to be a huge number of assets transferred to it. And the idea is to protect those assets from being sold off without the local residents having a say on how they're going to be sold off or coming up with an alternative use. So that was why that was done. I also noticed in the Dorset County, the plan, reading it online, is that this isn't scheduled to be finished until 2023. Now, some of the things that are happening in Wimborne, I can't really wait to 2023. The problem with car parking is a problem now. The problem in a year or so's time will be much worse. The problem with traffic pollution is bad now, and traffic certainly coming along West Street and into Westborough is getting to a level which is really unacceptable. So we feel that some action should be taken as soon as possible, either in the Dorset plan, but whether actually Wimborne Town Council is producing a plan for the future of Wimborne. So that's the points I'd like to make on those 2 items.
Thank you, Martin. Right. Okay, back to the committee then. You've seen your chart with the various options, various projects that we've taken up and are progressing through. Some have been done. You'll notice the numbers either end, numbers that are missing, like number 7, that's in there, and this 5 and 6. They're not on that list because they've already been approved, but the ones that haven't been progressed yet, with a no beside them, are on the other end. I would like to think that we haven't done anything. I don't know whether anybody wants to particularly bring up any of those items down that list. I could just quickly jump in and say the letter to the MP, we actually have done a draft on that, but it needs to be properly topped and tailed aside. Take on board what Martin said, and we would add those to our action list because we have had a presentation about the Pippin stroke, the school, and I've got the feeling, there was a general feeling of this is a good idea, we ought to look at this a little bit more carefully and take it forward. Bill?
Yes, just a couple of points. On number 12 was one of them, widening of pavements on East Street. I accept that in the interest of safety that's probably a good idea. But if I just go on to the next point, item 14, I was just chatting with Councillor Cook about the fact that I understood that the change of right-of-way from the High Street into East Street was almost a passing comment in the meeting that we had. And that was in response to Councillor March's suggestion about losing the last car park space. And Councillor Cook had just idly mentioned, I interpreted it as idly mentioning, that it would be possible to change the priority. I would hope that if you were doing something like that, the actual traffic flow and the implications were considered pretty seriously, because that's encouraging people to go through town and the high street, which is something perhaps that we'll want to be doing. And then harking back to the previous point, that in a way, if one had a plan and was considering it all as a whole, then the widening of the streets, if we were going to use East Street more, I don't know whether we would, then with the 600 homes up at Willett Arms and the Parter development and the Quarterjack development, there's probably going to be a gradual increase of traffic, and we might need to think more carefully about it than just simply change a priority here and there.
Yeah, complicated issues, aren't they? I have Carol and Sally.
Actually, if I could just come back, as I was mentioning.
You want to talk about that
Would you
one?
mind? Yes.
Sorry.
If I came back to what Councillor Richard
Okay.
said. I don't think it was quite a throwaway comment. I mean, it was said in reasonably serious pain, because it's something that has cropped up before about this priority at the junction of High Street and East Street, King Street. And we battled for some time to get additional parking spaces in East Street to compensate for the loss of some of the parking spaces elsewhere in the town centre. And we finally succeeded to get the whole strip of East Street put to parking, which is great on one side. Now, that did cause some issues. The feedback that came from that was that, particularly when there were vans there, and there had been a lot of work going on in some of the properties, conversions and so on, the builders' vans, when you came down to the junction to turn right into King Street, sometimes the view was obscured and you had to pull out almost into Holman's window before you could get round the corner, before you could see it was clear. It seemed to be a reasonable argument to perhaps suggest something like this, because the traffic flows would be monitored anyway. They would do a desktop exercise before they agreed to put anything in place. Take what Councillor Richmond said, but I failed to see whether traffic would necessarily increase, because where would it be coming from? If you're saying it's coming from east of the town, from the west of the town, Julian's Bridge, you can't come across the square and down High Street. Why would it, to go back on itself? If it's coming up Hannam Road, past Savills, why would you bother to go down Eastborough, down past the square and along King Street? So I'm not a traffic engineer. So I think if this goes ahead, it will be not a decision by, but a recommendation by the highway engineers as to whether they think it's practicable or not. That's all, I think. It's worth considering, because there has been, over a number of years, not just in the last few months, a number of comments about this. And it seems quite a simple solution, which could be reversed if it turned out to be unpalatable.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify that, thank you.
So we can continue to talk about that one. Yeah. Carol?
Yes, I remember it being discussed, but I didn't remember it was actually coming up as a formal minute to write on behalf of the council saying this is what we wanted done. It may be that it's in the minutes, but I didn't recall that. On item 14, I mean, there's one thing, people writing letters saying, yes, we know there's problems with traffic in town, and that's one thing, but we're putting forward alternative proposals, and I'm not sure it's been formally voted on by the council. but it may have been, it may be that I missed it, but if that's what's being done, then that's perhaps a different matter. I agree with Councillor Richmond. I can't, I'm trying to look up the minute of the meeting, but I don't know if it was actually noted that this was a formal proposal or whether it's been something that's been added on a different action list.
You want answers?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Chedji. I don't think it was a formal action that was voted on. It was just that the whole list of potential actions came out of a relatively informal meeting at County with Wmtc. And we were giving him ideas and thoughts and options for him to look at, and none of these things have been voted on by this council anyway. And my recall is that when we were discussing it here, Councillor Cook raised this as a potential, and we said, well, put it on the list as another potential, but none of these things have been voted on or decided on. They were just, let's not lose that thought, as far as I'm concerned. So I think, as you say, Councillor Cook, if it came to the desktop exercise and County were looking at it seriously, I think they would come back to us and say, look, we can't do these 3 things you've suggested, but we can do these 3. Do you want us to do it? So that's my understanding, that we haven't set wheels in motion here. They're just inquiries that we're making.
Yeah, just as a bit of starting an investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get it.
I just want to go back to Mr. Tidd's comment on the traffic, and maybe I'm speaking slightly out of order, but as far as I remember, we've had many discussions on the traffic around Wimborne in many of the streets, Westborough, Eastborough, wherever. And all I've got out of most of the meetings is that it's down to highways, and if highways don't think there is an issue, we feel slightly that there's not a lot we can do about it. I'm not disparaging what you just said, but it does seem to be a much bigger issue than just deciding on one area or one this or one that, because the highways don't seem to appear to think that there is an issue or there will be an issue. We know there will be an issue because we live here. But, so I struggle with that a little bit, to be fair.
Yeah. I hope you will agree with you there.
I was just going to say, Chairman, that there are a lot of roads in this town that are absolutely gridlocked at times. You've only got to take in Lyme Road, Stone Lane, Victoria Road at school time, and this can go on. What time did QE come out? 3:30? And it goes on beyond 5. The traffic is just piled up, and if, like we had an accident some weeks ago, you can't get out onto the A31, we are really, really stuck, and I think the whole of the town needs a good looking at, because we're at gridlock now. 1,000 to 1,500 new houses. Well, we might as well just get out and walk.
It is a problem that it's patchy. Give it that. There are times when it's really terrible, and other times when it's not so bad. Bit more I see it quite a lot, particularly that side of town. Anyway, Robin, what's this?
Well, yes, this is not in any way, shape or form meant to be a defence or an attack on local authority, but from my own experience over quite a number of years, and I'm sure Councillor Mrs Hymans, you'll support me on this, particularly in view of the Highway Authority, but many other areas of council work. They're nearly always firefighting, and what they do is reactive rather than proactive, sadly. And I'm not saying that that's right, but this is why they tend to look back and look at the cumulative effects rather than anticipate what might happen and put things into place, sadly, because that's in business how I would operate, but unfortunately it's not how it seems that the local authority operates. So your point is well made there. Yes, there is a major problem in the town, and I've said it before, it's gone on record that we shouldn't be tinkering about with little bits of it, because that will just shift the problem from that street to that street and there. We really need to do or get a review, as we did, and Councillor Richard and I were discussing it prior to the start of the meeting when the distributor road was brought in 1991. That was part of a whole review of the systems in and around Wimborne, and following on really from the bypass, which had opened in 1980, and then they looked and developed the work for the infrastructure of the road and changed the road system around Wimborne. And there were a number of elements in that which a lot of us disagreed strongly with. There were good bits as well, but a lot of it was not good. but it was at least to look at the whole of the thing, and I think we need to pressure for that to happen again as we move into the new authority.
Yes, I was just going to say, perhaps for the next meeting of this committee, could we have a bit more information, because dialogue continues doesn't really tell you anything.
Alan?
But for example, item 7, dialogue continues.
All right.
It doesn't tell you anything. And, or could we have some time frames put on here? I know the office is busy and I appreciate that, but there's a lot that doesn't seem to be happening from this report.
Well, I think I have at this point to say that we're all very aware of there isn't a lot happening at the moment, because the highways, as you know, are part of the county council. We're not passing the buck on this, it's just a fact of how it is. And they are in dire straits, trying to reorganise their own, the council level, and the rest of the work that they're supposed to do. A lot of officers have been removed, haven't got job anymore, so the staffing levels are down, and the workload continues to stack up. There's only another month, is it? The 1st of April, all the new authority comes into being, the new Dorset Council. So I can't see an awful lot happening between now and then. It doesn't mean to say, though, that we can't look, observe, have ideas and suggestions ready for when there is somebody in place who can take it seriously.
Yeah, I agree with you, but there are some items on here that we could actually progress. That aren't directly affected
By traffic.
on traffic. Well, I mean, you know, the development of the town plan and contacting the Bruton Town Councillor who's offered to come and see us. I think we should be progressing these now. What's the point of having a list if we're not going to do anything with it?
Yes. Well, we are trying to gradually do them, but they do. I think Holly's been finding it rather frustrating that she's not getting replies to emails and things as quickly as she would like. And it is a problem. Reorganisation doesn't happen without quite a bit of disruption.
I'd just like to say in defence of the office that we are incredibly understaffed, and we say this all the time, and other priorities have come into place, like meeting GDPR requirements, and the assistant town clerk's been doing an awful lot of work on that, and that has to be our priority, being legally compliant, and we weren't, and I think now we are, we're pretty close to it, and these types of things have had to take a back seat, not least because of what you've just said, Chairman, that we know we're not going to get any action, so we could have officers diverted to on the phone and sending emails and banging on doors, which would be a waste of our time when we've got other priorities, but we know nothing will get done. So I think, given the level of staff we have got at the moment, we have to put their priorities into places where they're more likely to get results.
Yeah, I think I have to say, you have to be a bit patient at this time. Not always easy, and I understand that. But at least it's got a date when it should be swinging back a little bit better position than it is at the moment. And of course, never forget, we have a really old special conservation area town built a long time ago, and it's not easy to find ways of having modern traffic fit into it without it causing trouble. Is there anything else on that list you want to bring up, or shall we keep you up to date with them, and we can add the hub, centre hub, the Pippins area, as something that we would like to investigate more and take further forward. What was the other thing Martin mentioned? School. The school? Oh yeah, that's almost part of it. Yeah, in the school. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go on to number 5. And this is Robin. Could you give us what I think will be interesting to hear as portfolio holders of planning, an update on how the local planning is moving?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much for allowing us to go on the agenda, because yes, I'm here obviously as a member of this Planning Environment Committee, but also with my planning portfolio holders hat on at District Council. And I've had a number of queries from residents and other places about progress with their local plan, notwithstanding from members of this very council. So I thought it would be prudent to give everybody an update as far as I'm able to with the information that I've got up till now, right? I haven't got a crystal ball, so forgive me, some of this here is going to be assumption as opposed to fact. But let me just, before I start, you know, by way of sort of giving you where we are, I thought I'd give you some history. So I'll give you a brief history of why we're reviewing it at all at this time. The existing plan we're still currently working to. That was adopted in 2014, and that's on a 5-year renewal cycle. So the government obliges us to renew our plans every 5 years, to look at our land supply that is sufficient for 5 years, and look at the appropriate housing quantities for that period and obviously beyond. We carried out this work then on the review, started round about the late part of 2016, beginning of 17. We had some major studies carried out during that time, those about the green belt, which has been published and is available online, flood risk, and also retail studies. These were to form part of the review of the local plan and to work with it. There was also expected a major transport modelling update study for the whole of South East Dorset, and the County Council were going to produce that in the late summer of last year. And that would also form a very great part of where we're going to be with our plan review. The original timeline for this review was for pre-submission to be in March this year, for adoption in early summer this year. That was the original timeline. Following the options consultation, which we held last autumn, and that finished on the 3rd of September, the analysis of responses showed that more work was required towards master planning, and together with the fact that the transport modelling study from the highways at Dorset County had been delayed until summer 2019, meant we had to change the timeline. And that was actually agreed at our Cabinet meeting on the 31st of October last year. At the time of this report, the pre-submission is expected, and I had this information as late as yesterday, the pre-submission is now expected to be late 2019, maybe early 2020. Now moving on, the impact of local government reform directly on our plan progress is difficult to assess. The new council has said it will expect to have a new plan for the whole of its area by 2023. So that's quite a tall order, because they come into being on the 1st of April 2019. So they give themselves 4 years to produce a plan for the whole of Dorset, as it is. Anyway, perhaps we won't comment on that at the moment. But how they'll deal with the outgoing authority plan reviews, and they're all currently at different stages. Some have already been completed, others are in a state as we are, ready for work being done on them. That will be a decision for the new council to take. The best guess is that they will utilise and build on the work already done to input into their overarching plan. And at the Shadow Executive Committee meeting on the 11th of February, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, don't worry, they did agree, part of it here, that all existing work carried out to date for current district local plan reviews shall be used where possible to shape the new Dorset Council local plan. So it doesn't look as if they're going to throw out all the work that we've done thus far, but they're going to use what we've done and work with that for the Dorset local plan as a whole, the overarching plan. As far as district council is concerned, I mean, we're going to continue to work on ours right up to the changeover date to ensure that it's all handed over as up to date as it can be. And also a report submitted to the Shadow Executive on October the 15th did recommend that existing local plan reviews should be continued. So that, in fact, did get carried forward, and they agreed to do that, which is quite good. The decision about how to progress local plan preparation will be one of the first tasks for the new council after the 1st of April. Coming back on Mr. Tibb's point that he made, he mentioned about having our own plan, if you like, and getting things moving more quickly than this. And I understand, you know, that feeling of urgency around this. When we could go for what is known as a neighbourhood plan, we could put in a neighbourhood plan. The only thing about a neighbourhood plan, two things: you have to get the agreement of the public tier authority that is happy with that, and also, generally speaking, the neighbourhood plan needs to align with the aims of the overarching plan. In other words, with a neighbourhood plan, you think you might be able to go off and design it in a way that suits you, but if that doesn't work that way, it's got to align with the aims and objectives of the upper tier authority plan. So it's not quite as easy as it sounds, but it's a very good idea in principle. I don't see how it's going to speed things up now, the way we are with LGR and the new council. A lot of decision making now, obviously, will be made by the new authority. So I can't second guess what
are they going to say?
District Council will continue to do its best to prepare the plan and not leave things in poor order when we hand over on the 31st of March. Happy to take questions.
Can I ask you one quickly? The new Dorset Council, there'll be one planning authority for the whole of Dorset? Because there are no districts with their individual ones, or is this, I thought I heard they were going to chop it up into sections.
Planning authority as opposed to planning committees. What is your question? Is it planning authority? Because the planning authority will be Dorset Council.
Yeah, committees.
There will be the idea at the moment is well, it's been established to have 3 committees. One to cover the eastern area, one to cover the western area, and one to cover parts of Wales, Portland, that central bit.
So
there will be a planning committee made up of members predominantly from the east of the county. That's whichever section it's in, the members from that area will be predominantly part of it for obvious reasons, because they should know the area better than others. I'm also pleased to note in some papers that came out earlier, or at the end of last week, that the meetings, the planning meetings, are going to be held alternately between the Quarterjack Suite and Purbeck, which is quite good because it means we do get our fair share of planning meetings on our home patch, which I'm very pleased about. And also Purbeck at Westport House is not too far away, people want to pop over there. So it's quite good that we're going to have those meetings in a sort of familiar locality.
So we include, Purbeck,
yes,
Wareham,
yes.
And do we include Blandford in our?
No, that comes under North Dorset.
That's North Dorset. Ferndown obviously in with us.
Yeah. Everywhere up to the Christchurch border.
I wonder if we've got a map that shows us where these lines
I no doubt there will be one in due course.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
I had a question. I thought when we were looking and commenting on that draft local plan, that the idea was to finalise it before the 1st of April. That was the plan. And I also remember somebody saying or hearing somewhere that if there wasn't a plan in place at any point, that we were at risk for erroneous developments if there wasn't a plan in place. Now, if we're not going to get it over the line for the 1st of April, and there's potentially 4 years till one is put in place, what exposure have we got?
Through you, Chairman, I'm glad that Councillor Kelly's asked that question because it's very, very important. At the moment, we're still protected because we are, in fact, still within the 5-year window of our existing plan. But there is a risk, while the new plan is being progressed, that the developer could take advantage of a window of opportunity and slip in an application for an area for planning permission, which has not yet been identified, and which you would have difficulty in throwing out, in essence. There is a case where it happened. There was a window of opportunity where we were doing the preparations for our local plan review, when, I won't mention the name of the company, but it's a big national land grab company. They've got strength, terrific strength. They took a window of opportunity and they put a planning application in Alderholt for 40 plus houses, which wasn't obviously in their local plan, and our planning committee threw it out. It went to appeal and the inspector upheld it. They said no, sorry, but they gave them permission. Because our plan was in the process of being redone. That's one of the risks, and there is still that risk. It's not going to go away. And I don't think that I try not, I try to be straight with people and not try and say it how it isn't. This is at national government level, the pressure is really on to deliver houses. It isn't going to go away, actually, with whatever colour government we end up with. That pressure will still be there because there is a desperate need to provide homes at all levels. So I'm not anticipating that the new Dorset plan, when it goes ahead, will actually give us a lot that is greatly different to what possibly we're expecting, if I can say that. The numbers of houses are probably going to remain very much as they are to fulfil the government requirement, because those figures have come from the government and that they were reviewed in the latter part of last year. So we're working on current government figures, and the Dorset Council, or the Dorset Council area, has so many areas of constraint where you were unable to build, that it will mean that those areas that have been identified already by existing authorities now will still be the areas that could be used for development. They're not going to change. So I don't think we're going to see a lot different. But here I am, I'm trying to preempt something I shouldn't be.
I was just going to say that the 2 points. One was that about 2 or 3 months ago, a Shaping Dorset newsletter said that the government had said it was mandatory for the new Dorset Authority to have a new local plan for the area by 2024. So they're obviously trying to do it a year earlier. So that, in some senses, is good. Secondly, the local plan was never going to be finished by the 1st of April. What we went through last year was a consultation to get, it was an informal consultation. They were then, the aim was then, as I understood it, that the draft plan for consultation was coming out around February, March. Then they'd have the actual formal consultations back, and then it would go through its normal procedure in the summer and autumn. So the earliest it would have been finalised would be the autumn. My concern is that if there's going to be a task and finish group, which is suggested in the last newsletter, looking at this after the election, and they're going to adopt what's been done so far, my concern is they're not actually going to progress anything for anyone that's been done so far, that it's all just going to grind to a halt. All right, they might take the draft that's sat in a corner and work on it, but for 2023, otherwise are they going to finish everybody's plans that are in a state of progress and then do another combined one and then just add it all together? I suppose, as Councillor Cook says, we've got to wait and see, but I suspect it is all just going to come to a grinding halt.
Oh.
That's my fear.
Yes, go on.
Well, yes, I mean, Councillor Church is right. I mean, as I said earlier, we can't second guess what's going to happen. I would think it would be very foolish for the new council to chuck all the work that's been done away and start again, particularly with the timeline that they've got. I mean, this 4-year period is going to be tough, is an understatement, to produce a plan for the whole of Dorset in that time. So I would think they'll bear very heavily on what we've already got. And the reason, I'm glad that this was highlighted, that options consultation that we undertook was, we didn't have to do it, but we did it because we wanted to get a feel of what was out there, what people's reactions would be. And it was interesting because when we were doing the last plan, which we went through several years of agony until we finally got it adopted in 2014, nearly all the messages coming out on that one were, we don't want the houses, we don't want the houses, we don't want the houses. Nearly all the messages coming out on this one is, we more or less accept the houses, but the infrastructure, the traffic, the GP surgeries, the schools, the education, so on, they can't deal with it. Now, a big part of that is this multimodal study, which is the traffic modelling facility. That figures a great part in how you actually formulate your plans. And without an up-to-date version of that, then really on a hide into nothing. So that's the main reason that we Cabinet asked for a delay on that, because without that study, we were not going to get an accurate plan out, because that really does look at the overall forecast for traffic and other areas of infrastructure.
Yeah, I was just mention one little thing that happened when we had the AGM for the Vision Wimborne, and we had Jane Lynch as the Chief Planning Officer and Linda King came and spoke, and one of the things that's burned into my brain was Jane Lynch saying there are no plans to extend Wimborne anymore. You've had your rather hard whack, and there should not be. She didn't expect there to be any plans of any more major development around the town, for what it's worth. Bill, I just wondered if you were going to say something about the neighbourhood plan, which is something you've been very interested in.
No, I was keen to see it on the list there, and I think, looking at Councillor Butter's face, I think I would have been keen to see that progress. We have the new strategy pretty much in place, and I accept everything that Councillor Cook says. And whilst obviously any neighbourhood plan needs to reflect the overall strategy, I would have hoped, I would have thought, I would have liked to have seen that being looked at parallel, especially if we're looking at 2023 and 2024.
I do back you on that. I think that's one thing that we do need to pull forward in our actions that we might or might not take, and do something about it, not just talk about it. And we'll make sure that's with a star beside it.
Yes, Chairman. Again, I'm sorry, but I think I do need to respond to these comments so there is some clarity.
Yes, why not?
There's no reason why we can't do it. There isn't. In fact, at a Cabinet meeting next week, there is a paper going to Cabinet. I've just signed off this afternoon that Alderholt have requested support for a neighbourhood plan, and will they get the support of the District Council? There's no reason why we can't, but we've got to consider what resources, and Councillor Mrs Webb said, we are so tight for resources in this authority, in this town council, that it does involve an enormous amount of work, and it also involves working with them. And the District Council will give you support, they'll give you help where they can, but they're under extreme pressure at the moment, because the people are being relocated. Whilst I'm not saying they won't do it, it will be very difficult for them to give us the time that it would need, and we would find it difficult to have the time to do it. I'm sorry to sound negative, I think it's a good idea, I think we should look at it, but we've got to look at it in a very sensible and logical manner, and can we deal with it properly? That's really what we need to do.
I've got to Carol first.
On this neighbourhood plan, could we, rather than just sticking it on a list, could we say, let's get this guy from Bruton down, let's make a date for him to come and talk to us.
The guy from...
Is it Bruton, is it?
Where they've done one.
And if we can find time in the schedules, can we actually just have a report about what it actually involves, what the potential cost is, and then we know what we're looking at. If Alderholt are looking for a neighbourhood plan, it would seem to me that if we're not careful, we're going to get landed with more housing, contrary to what's being said. Because under this draft consultation local plan, Alderholt is taking it. It's getting the whammy of housing that we've had this time. So if Alderholt's going for a neighbourhood plan, their idea will be that it bounces back somewhere else. So let's not sit on this. At least investigate it properly. Let's have a report. Let's see what the cost is. Let's see what the time is. Otherwise, we're just talking in the round, not knowing.
You don't mind working nights, do you?
I'm not saying Holly's got to do it all, but let's see what we're talking about. We don't even know. We don't know how much of it would go out to...
I pick up your enthusiasm, Carol. I think that's very worthy. And
if I could remember every word that Councillor Chedji just said, that's precisely what I was going to say.
She'd like to do it ASAP. But I appreciate that probably not having enough people to do all the jobs that seem to be needing to be done these days. Okay, thanks very much, Robin. It's very useful, isn't it? Yes, to have that update, because things are going to change, and we are very much in the hands of central government saying you've got to provide so many houses. We can't just say no, because I gather we get fined if we don't do it, and we're told you're going to have more.
Correct. Yes, this is the stupid anomaly that if you don't deliver the quantities, you actually impose a punishment. Yes, yeah.
Well, I think this is this from Yes, is that a, would you like to take that to proposal? Yes.
I'll second it.
And Bill Richard will second it. Will. Are you all in favour of us progressing the...
I will abstain because of my
Yeah, we
position.
understand that. Are we all happy with that, that we progress the neighbourhood plan?
Could you hold that I have abstention?
Yeah. Yeah.
Righto. We can move on to the next one, which is the street naming. We talk about this, don't we? I wonder how many of you have put suggestions forward. I don't think we've heard them. Anyway, I think I'm going to ask Holly to just update on this because it's quite complicated.
So earlier this year, following a request from the town mayor, I spoke to East Dorset District Council and asked whether or not the town council could put forward a list of suggested street and road names for the new developments that were happening around the town. They came back and said that they could pass on our request to the relevant developers. They sent us a copy of the policy that they use that helps set out the different street names. And then over the last couple of weeks, we were also approached by Coal Hill Parish Council, and they asked if they could work jointly with us to set some names up for the Quarterjack Park, which would have names around those that would have, in memory of those that were killed in World War I from the two parishes. So this report was written last week to come to you tonight for you to put forward a couple of people to work with Coal Hill to come up with a list of names. However, we received this week an email from the District Council, from the street naming and numbering team, with a list of suggestions that the Quarterjack Park developer has put forward for that development. So we have, Lawrence and I have written back to the District Council this afternoon. We tried calling as well, but there was nobody available, just to see whether or not does this mean that the developer will not does not wish to sort of consult on any possible names for the new development, or whether the communication wasn't actually passed on to them in the first place. So as it stands, I mean, I don't know how you want to take this forward, but I probably wouldn't suggest that you make any sort of final decisions on it, just in case the developer doesn't wish to consult with you.
It's up to him.
Yeah, so that's the latest.
Kelly.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because it was this committee a number of months ago that decided that we would want to preempt this so that we weren't on the back foot as we were previously. And so all members were invited to suggest names. We talked to the town crier, who has done a bit of history in terms of residents from the war in our parish. And I spoke to Councillor Packer and said, yes, we would be happy to work with Coal Hill Parish Council. So everything was good, everything was planned, everything was done in advance. And so we're not sure, as Holly said, whether it's fallen through the gaps or whether the developer just isn't interested in what we have to offer. So I think that as a matter of urgency, the clerk and assistant town clerk need to get to the bottom of that, because there's no point anyone spending time on this if the developers are not minded to listen. And if they are, of course, as chairman of planning, I think you can take this forward with Coal Hill.
I just want to say a lot of you weren't on when waterside development was done, and they sent us all names in there. And we wrote back and said, no, we would like all of these names, and they took in Howarth, who had been killed. And they changed the whole of that development for the names that we put forward.
Can we, so they did it.
Just say, Chairman, I think in some ways, I like this idea, but I think in some ways it's could be very controversial as to who you put forward to name a road after, especially as the numbers that were killed in World War I and World War II will outstrip the number of streets we have. And I don't know if perhaps, I know there were families that lost over 3 sons, whether the precedent ought to be taken from a multiple rather than a single person. I just think it's very, very difficult, and someone's going to have their nose put out if you just put in, as you know, as suggested, say I put in, you know, Bill Smith and Mrs Jones down the road said, why isn't my son included? It's very, very difficult, I think, that.
Good point. Good point. Robin?
Well, I take Holly's point that we should wait and see, but I find, you know, what we've had here is a distinct lack of local knowledge by the developer. Because if anybody local would know that you're not likely, quarter jack is 2 words to start with, it's quarter jack, not quarter jack. That's that point. We already have Avenue Road, but it's commonly known as the Avenue, as indeed it used to be many, many years ago. It was originally known as the Avenue, so they're saying the Avenue. Chalice, now I'm not sure this is district council, but the spelling of chalice, presumably is meant to be chalice as in the cup, well that is incorrectly spelled. And Cloister Mews, I don't know, that doesn't, there are 2 walkways, Cloisters are a walkway and Mews, so that doesn't seem to fit. So it seems a bit of a, I think we've got a good argument, if you like, to say to them, well, what you've chosen is a load of rubbish. Sorry.
Can I just come back on that? When I first saw this sign up for quarter jack, the development, I thought, well, it's actually nowhere near the quarter jack. I know it was at one time in Coal Hill, but it's so far away from the actual town centre. It would have been much better if it had been called quarter jack up at Cuthbury.
Yeah, that's true. I wondered about that. Anne, sorry, Anne's on it, just Diane.
I just want to sort of just put something in for the Cuthbury development, which is mentioned here. The fact that there have been allotments there for over 100 years, and there are local people who work the allotments along that. There are a lot of local things happening there, and I would like that to be borne in mind when the Cuthbury allotments comes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I think if you've got any ideas, there's no harm at all in sending them in now, although now is not the time they're going to make a decision, but to have a bit of a sort of backlog of and sort of record of suggestions that may not be appropriate for Waterjack, but will be very appropriate for Cuthbury when that one comes on stream. Yeah, Sally.
Can I, who named the houses on the Cranbourne, the roads on Cranbourne Estate? Did we do
We were involved in it. Yes.
Right. But did the developer have a hand
Yes,
in
he
that
did.
as well?
He did.
Which, without being rude, seemed a little bit,
They're a bit
can I
flowery,
say,
aren't they?
twee?
But we were consulted on
Okay,
them, I have to say
right.
that.
Okay. We need something a little bit more stronger.
It's nice when it is local, but I do
Historical,
take Anne's
actually.
proper point. It would be, you can understand the hurt it might cause if somebody.
Perhaps we just need to do a bit more in depth on it, because
Yeah.
there must have been certain names that came up that might have had more than, tragically lost more than one person.
Yeah, we will be aware of that. If you do have ideas, do tell them, Tampa.
I want to know if that's on my
Yeah, can I just about, I mean, proposals come from Coal Hill,
Yeah,
Parish Council, so I think we need to agree on
talk to
what's
them,
to
we're
do.
going to talk to them. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, welcome, Jane. We haven't done it yet.
My chairman,
Sorry.
window open, it's so hot in here.
You very hot. I would only like to open and close. This wasn't quite full.
Oh, does it?
Is that all right?
Thank you.
Now, we need a proposal on those, do they?
Well, I would propose that between yourself, Chairman, and the Assistant Town Clerk, you get to the bottom of what's happening and whether the developers are willing to discuss this with the Town Council. We had already told Coal Hill Parish Council that we're happy to work with them, but the Town Council would have to take the lead. And so the proposal would be to sort of delegate it to you as Chairman and the Assistant Town Clerk to take it forward. With Coal Hill Parish Council once you've established whether the developer is willing to discuss it further.
So, are you happy with that? We'll certainly circulate everybody before we make a final decision. Oh, Shane.
This came before when we did the Water's Edge development.
Yeah, and Diane's just said it.
Yeah, we did. We raised this with the district council, and they are supposed to come to us to ask for us to put contributions to names forward. It was just unfortunate with the Cranbourne Road development, it came at very short notice to us. My recollection of that. And we have asked them to give us more time in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, now you have a second to what Kelly has said, and that's Carol. Okay, everybody? All vote, please, so we've got an official. Okay, thanks. Okay, we will move back to item 2, which was the replacement of town centre paving slabs with tarmac, which is causing considerable stress and upset. Now, I know Martin wants to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Pavements. Yeah, why tarmac? I had a conversation. I was disturbed in my study on Valentine's Day to hear the sound of pickaxe pulling up slabs on the corner of Pye Lane. When I looked out, I saw them taken away, loading them in a lorry. So I went out and said, "Are you replacing them with slabs?" They said, "Oh no, we're replacing them with tarmac." So I said, "Okay, fine." So I went back in, I phoned up Dorset County Council, and I spoke to a gentleman there who refused to give me his name, which I would probably take up further, who then told me, "We are saving you residents a lot of money by putting tarmac down." I said, "Oh, well, I was a bit shocked that he should say that. But then the following day, they came back again and took the other side of Pye Lane up and did exactly the same thing. They also took the slabs up going into West Row and replaced it with tarmac. Now, the reason this was done, actually, if you go back last year, there were a number of power cuts in West Street. And in fact, the electricity board came along, did all the work, and they replaced them with slabs. I don't know whether they were the correct slabs, but they were slabs, and it looked in accordance with the conservation area. So I was quite happy. But when I was told, and because Shane took this up for me, and found from Dorset County Council that they no longer have any slabs, and the council can't afford them. I also gather, because I spoke to Catherine Lowish at East Dorset District Council, I said, was there a conversation between Dorset County and the East Dorset Conservation Officer about doing work in a conservation area? And she told me there wasn't. Now, either we have a conservation area and it's maintained, or we just put tarmac over all the pavements. Now, if I live in a listed building. If I wanted to put double glazed windows in the front, I would be told no way. But I don't have the power to actually just override decisions. I also took it up with Historic England, and they have a set standard in the conservation area of how streets should look. It should be in accordance with the conservation area. And even they say they can't force councils to do the right work, to do the right thing. Now, I'm concerned that with the new unitary authority, is this money saving going to be the be-all and end-all, and the fact that Wimborne will not have decent paved streets in accordance with the conservation area? Now, I could actually link this with a neighbourhood proposal, because it could actually be part of that. And I would actually I quickly looked up neighbourhood towns, and you can actually do the report very, very quickly if there was a mind to do it. And I will go back to when we decided to have a bid in Wimborne, that we put a bid proposal together in a matter of months and got it through. Looking at what's needed in a neighbourhood town review, it isn't much different. It's just getting people to work together. Now, I would maintain that there are enough organisations in this town that would be willing to get involved in a neighbourhood town to put forward, because I don't think we've got the time to wait till 2023 for a Dorset-wide review. I think this town needs a proposal quickly, and we need to be forcing the new authority to take it seriously. This is our town, and we should be proud of it.
Thank you, Martin.
Surely, Chairman, if they took the slabs up, the slabs still exist. Where are they? You know, I don't see that
Broken.
Officer's guard.
Yeah.
I know this has been investigated quite. We had a sort of call between Shane and myself and Robin, didn't we, about this, and I was updated on the policy of the county council. Do you want to catch up on that, Shane?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, we did have a conference call of sorts between the three of us, because it fell within me as came highways and Councillor Cook's portfolio of planning in terms of conservation area. So I've spoken again to officers again, twice I've been back to county, I haven't been accountable today, so I spoke to officers again. The priority obviously in terms of pavements is safety, so if they get cracked or broken pavement slabs and they're moving, then they put tarmac down as a temporary measure because the safety is their first priority, they have a duty to that. Utilities, when they're doing work, replace the slabs with tarmac, but they are supposed to come back in 6 months and replace the slabs. And it would appear that in several instances around the town that hasn't been done, and the officer's going to look into that and check up on that as to one, why it hasn't been done, and places where it hasn't occurred. The tarmac is supposed to be a temporary measure, however, there is insufficient budget at the moment for the county to buy slabs in. So there is no slabs in the depot, and we're sort of jumping the gun a bit because obviously these were to be decisions that would be taken by the new authority when it comes into being in May. And that was an issue that we'd have to take up with the new authority as a town council. There is no law, as has already been stated, to prevent tarmac from being laid in a conservation area. There is no law to prevent them from doing that, they can do that. And finally, if there is insufficient budget now and going into the new authority, we don't know about the new authority yet, what their policy may be, what they may deem is right or what they want to do. But presently, with no budget there at county, if the town council is minded to have the slabs replaced, then the probability is that we would have to fund that ourselves as a parish council.
Right. As always, comes down to money, doesn't it? Robin?
Yes, I know, it's sad, isn't it? It always comes down to money, but you know, I can't, when I was told that they hadn't got any slabs, I thought, well, I can go to B&Q and get slabs. If I want 6, I can buy 6. If I want 600, I can buy 600. I mean, we're not asking them to put in an order to cover slabs on the whole of Dorset. God forbid, we've got enough concrete going down as it is, but you know, these areas, they say, not the utility ones, we'll leave those out for a minute because that is a different, as Shayla said, it's a different story. But the ones that we do as highways, yes, make it good as quickly as possible. The reason they're doing it, I understand, is because most of them are where there are runways over for vehicles and the existing pavement slabs are cracked. If they replace them, the same thing will happen again. Well, that's what I call a defeatist attitude. Surely you would have a look at a specialised type of paving or flagstone that will take the weight of vehicles and have that put down. And as I said, we're not talking vast quantities. So I don't think the money necessarily is at the end of this. It's not terrific quantities. If you kept on top of it, I'm sure it could be almost cost saving. Shane's right about utilities. I mean, we had this issue cropped up in West Street some time ago when I was still on the county council. And we had to keep on and on and on at the utilities, and they did finally come back and put the slabs down. But they did try and evade their responsibilities. It seemed they were trying to evade their responsibilities. It may be that they had other things to deal with. But it did take quite some badgering and cajoling and threatening almost to get them to come back. So he's absolutely right. It's up to the local authority to bring pressure to bear to get these replaced where they have been removed. But it's a sad state of affairs, and the conservation officer, I know that we've been in touch here, but also I contacted her following the phone call that we had last week, 3 of us, and she wasn't, as you said, she wasn't aware, and she said she would go and have a look for herself and see the affected areas, which I understand she has done, but I don't think, I've not had any, I did follow up with her and I haven't had a communication back, but as I understand it, she at this stage hasn't got very far with highways on this one.
Sally?
Well, I just sort of want to say, and it seems a little bit unfair, and I totally accept what you're saying about we're talking about pavements and problems, but if it's a conservation area, whether it's to do with the public or an independent householder, it seems a little bit unfair. There's one rule for one and one rule for the other, because they are very, very strict on what a house owner has to do, and what have you, as you said. So, and as Robin says, paving slabs, it's not a huge amount of money. I just don't understand. And the pictures that we saw, it does look awful, I have to say, Diane. You know, to have this blob of tarmac in the middle of lovely paving stones is wrong. Sorry, I think it's just wrong.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, I'm surprised, totally accept that Councillor Bonnet says that there isn't a law. We would certainly be concerned if a development in the conservation area didn't conform to requirements, and for this to happen, it erodes steadily the quality of the town, and we depend on people coming here. You can think of lots of historic towns around the country that depend on tourism, and I'm sure, I would hope that they would preserve the quality of the town as we're trying to do. I'm just surprised that for such a comparatively small amount of money, in a way they haven't accepted that there are some historic towns in the area that are going to require slabs and that we've run out.
Could we formally write to them as a council and
Sorry?
could we formally write to them as a council following this meeting?
The county.
The county. And I know we've got LGR and it must have an impact, but highways has always been Dorset anyway, hasn't it? It's not the district
It's
council.
just it's a different council. Yeah.
But it always has
Is
been,
that a
hasn't
proposal?
it? Yeah, it's a proposal that we actually write to them and keep monitoring it for when we go into the next financial year.
Okay.
Because we could pay for it ourselves, but why should Wimborne and the other towns aren't paying? So I think we need to keep on monitoring it.
Shane?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, as I said, what I said just now was from the officer's report of where we stand factually. They don't have the slabs, they don't have the budget, they have to put the tarmac down to the safety issue first. I think we should be writing to the authority. I'm not sure that it's the county one we should be writing to. The 29th of March, just over a month from now, it ceases to exist. So my disappointment is that the shadow authority has not engaged with town and parish councils in the manner in which they should have done leading up to the process of LGR. It was supposed to have happened, it didn't happen because we were put in a position to bring about LGR on such a restrictive time frame. The 6 sovereign councils are trying to get the new Dorset Council, when it comes into being, to a point where it will cross the line to be statutory and legally compliant. And it is been an awful battle for the officers to try and achieve that. We should be writing to the authority, but I think it needs to be the new authority. I think that would carry more weight. It would obviously, you know, the other one isn't going to be in existence in a matter of days. So I think in writing to the new authority when it comes into being, and as you rightly say, we are a town, a destination town. We've built on tourism. It's intrinsically important to us. And I think that we need to be at the forefront there as a market town, as a big player in Dorset, in formulating a policy with the new council, which hopefully they could roll out across the county to historical market towns like ours, that the environment within those town councils is maintained to a degree that we expect it to. It's not good enough to be putting tarmac in paved areas in ancient historical market towns like this. It does need to be slabbed. And I take Councillor Cook's point that you wouldn't have thought it was beyond the wits of man to actually put a pavement slab down that was strong enough to cope with traffic that cuts corners across it. I am mindful of the fact that when I drove through the town a couple of weeks ago, there was a 54-seater coach, or however big they are, parked on the pavement with all 4 wheels in front of the Tivoli. I almost couldn't believe what I was looking at. Now all the services and everything that run open under the pavements, the electric, gas, water, all the rest of it, they're not designed to have coaches driving on them. How many times, particularly in Westborough, do we see traders' vans parked up on the pavements? Continually. It's not enforced. We're doing nothing about it, but this is what's causing the damage. It costs the taxpayer an extreme amount of money to put it right. If it ends up within our court as a town council, then it's going to cost our residents in the town a horrendous amount of money because it'll have to go on precept if the new authority feels it doesn't have the budget to put these pavement slabs down. So I think there needs to be a conversation, as Councillor Chitty rightly says, with the new authority when it comes into being to try and formulate a policy that market towns like this are given the correct attention that they deserve.
Just to get you, is it right, Carol, you made a proposal that we write to the new,
I think the new authority would be,
to be forwarded on to the new council.
yeah, asking.
Just a comment, Chairman. I was up in Blandford last week and was reading the Blandford, like the Stour and Avon was. And they're actually having all their paviours in the town renewed. So perhaps that's where all the paviours are, because they're slippery.
We have to.
So we have okay, Kelly, do you want to second Carol? Or?
Well, I was just going to add to it insofar as yes, we need to write and yes, we need a conversation, but I think the letter ought not say, can we have our slabs back? I think the letter ought to say we would like to open dialogue about a better solution. Clearly tarmac's not attractive, but there might be something that's better than just slabs. So, for example, you can go into some ancient towns and they have the old style cobbles, which are newly placed because they better have weight distribution and can handle vehicles and probably would look better than some of the slabs that we've got. So there might be better solutions, and I just think if we are going to write to raise an issue, it's better to say, we might not be right in saying give our slabs back, but we are definitely right in saying tarmac's not good, and we would like to open dialogue about a better solution.
Yeah.
And it might be that this town council is willing to financially support a better solution. It might be in a number of sites and makes quite a feature, another feature that complements the town street scene. So I do second it, but I just need to be careful what we say.
Yes, so, Carol? Oh no, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say something, because I emailed Lawrence about this last week with photographs, and I didn't know something else was happening at all.
Oh, it's been
So
all around the town.
So nobody told me you were, I just talked
You didn't
about
know?
myself, because I was
Oh gosh.
just fed up with West Street on what it was, so I never knew anybody else was
Oh,
even
right.
talking
Well, it
about
just
it.
goes to show. Sorry?
Just goes to show some
Yes,
people are more
we've got a proposal. Let's do this first. We've got a proposal,
Yes.
and you add in
I
amendments from Shane about who to write to, and to include looking at other options that might be acceptable and appropriate.
don't think we should offer to pay for it in the first instance.
No, we won't talk about that just yet. Bill, you want to
So,
we'll take a vote in a minute.
can I just suggest that back on item 3, the traffic sign, Redcoats Lane, and the involvement with the car park at Tivoli, amongst that little text there, it suggested writing to the Tivoli to ask that perhaps consideration be given about exiting into Redcoats Lane. Could we perhaps also mention parking on the front of the theatre by full-size coaches relative to the paving in the same letter in a pleasant way?
To the Tivoli. Let's not get that confused with the tarmac issue. But yes,
But it's just part of the same.
Yeah, we'll put that in with the Tivoli. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a proposal. You've heard it all, and we've widened it out to include the possible options of other things other than slabs, depending on probably where exactly the piece of pavement or road is. And we've got various finishes to the pavements now, in different parts of the town, so it wouldn't be impossible to do. Anyway, proposal, second, those in favour? I think there's 2 hands up from most people.
Chairman, can I just say just something frivolous on top of it, so unity? Perhaps if they take any up in the future, we could store them on the town council and then they can ask for them back and then you do it.
That's wrote on slabs. Yes. It would be crazy paving. Okay, so we're turning over now. And we're on the update of the major developments. You know that we... Oh, sorry, I've just seen the heading here that I should have mentioned. It could, just for a minute, We did have a letter delivered this morning to the Town Hall from Vision Wimborne, who had a meeting last week, and they raised the issue of the paving slabs and saying, writing on behalf of Vision Wimborne, raised concern over the residents of share it regarding the state of pavements in Wimborne, and are we going to do something about it? Was that aspect, okay? So we'll reply to them saying that we are. As we're on 7, like I just said, we try to keep an update on these big developments around the town. We've had a couple of emails. The Cranbourne Road one, which is the furthest ahead, that's from Elizabeth Adams. I'll just read it what it says. The only change on the Cranbourne Road site is that I am anticipating a revised reserved matters application to amend the design of the houses to be sited northeast of the school, as I understand that Bellway have purchased this element of the site. So we have to watch that. I don't know what they're going to do, whether squeezing in more or just rearranging them. But there is a sort of change there.
Can I sort of add some comment? This is just what somebody has told me, that somebody that they know has purchased a house up there, and they have been told not to put anything too heavy in the loft because it won't hold it. And I just thought, oh.
Can I just ask you, Councillor Bartlett, did you say the school was, we might be able to see the school, or it's getting very much, and the roof's on, I mean, it's going ahead, isn't it?
Yes, Madam Chairman, there's a tour of the school being done for upper tier councillors on the 28th. I can't make that, I think it was the 28th. I've spoken to officers to ask whether town councillors and the clerks would be able to have a tour of the school, and the officers are amenable to that. I just need to get back to them. I told them I would contact the clerk and get the clerk to organise it, so if members wish to have a tour of the new school, then that will be forthcoming shortly.
What date was that?
I won't say that yet.
Oh, we
I'll
don't.
give the clerk, and the clerk
Okay.
will organise it, I'm sure.
Carol?
On the, does that mean that part of what we sometimes call the law home sites being sold off to another developer?
Yeah.
Because I did hear a rumour that they had to stop them building, and I didn't know if we knew how this was affecting the 106 money. Do we know how that's going to impact?
The answer is no, we don't.
Can we ask?
Yeah. Do you know anything about that, do you?
Madam Chairman, the information I have from officers are that they are building units, the units are selling on the Cranbourne Road development. I think there's a rumour mill that goes around the town, which I think obviously not worth listening to. We've had no indication from officers that East West District Council and the portfolio of planning has set a table. I'm not aware of any issues from the officers or any worries or anything. I think it's just small town politics possibly.
I had a meeting yesterday morning. This was discussing other things. There was nothing that came out there relating to that particular issue. As far as we're concerned, the 106 agreement is a legal that has been signed off. So, you know, what the developer does in terms of what he can do within the conditions that apply, that's up to him.
Yeah.
If he's changed the style of the houses or whatever, who actually builds them is not of great consequence in any way. But 106, as far as we're concerned, it's signed off, and you know,
Yes, it's done.
the money is guaranteed from that point of view.
You'll have to wrap it in with the price he charges for the, yeah. Okay? Anyway, we'll watch that space, I think. Anne, have you?
I was just going to say, did we ought to, or possibly have, included Coal Hill in the councillors there? Because I know it's not in Coal Hill now, but a lot of the children from Coal Hill go, and I don't know if, you know, or perhaps possibly somebody ought to write and settle. I've no doubt Councillor Packer has told them that this tour is taking place. I just wondered, you know, we're trying to build bridges and work together, and as I said, a lot of Coal Hill children come down to Wimborne schools, and I just wondered if their councillors ought to be involved as well in going and having a look around.
Well, I'm sure we can tell them we're doing it if they want to do it as well. Yeah.
Joan, yeah, it was the original offer to the tour was for the councillors of the district and county level, and I asked the officers if the town council members would be able to have a tour of the school with the clerk already said. When you're on construction sites like this, often numbers are an issue, so it may well be that Colwell may need to contact them and arrange their own.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't
I agree,
say
but
together.
I agree, yeah, but it probably, I think we'd restrict it to our town council with our clerk organising it and
Yeah.
sort the dates out for members. of the
Okay,
committee.
so we'll let you know about that. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? The other email is from Robert Fane, who we have had here. This is about the Lye Road, Long Lye Road, on this quarter jack on there. Officers are working towards potentially, that's underlined for some reason, taking both outstanding Lye Road applications, and then he gives the numbers, to East Dorset Planning Committee in March, either the 13th or the 20th. Then the next paragraph says, if not, they will be taken to the Dorset Council Planning Committee in the new year. No, not in the new year. Later in the year. So, I don't know. We'll let you know when they come. We didn't have any reply on the Cuthbury site.
Well, I can update you, or Robin can update you. Do you want to say something first about the Cuthbury, Robin?
Yes, it's not quite done and dusted yet, although the planning permission was granted at the last full meeting that you attended. There's the thorny issue of the footpath diversion. And believe it or not, that decision has to be made by the district council, not the regulatory committee at county council. And it is coming to the cabinet on the Wednesday, the 6th of March. The paper's coming to cabinet. It's for members to decide whether to approve it or not. So there you go. That is an interesting one, because normally one would assume that the county roads and rights of way people, or regulatory committee as they now call it, would be the one to make the decision. But no, it's the planning authority in this case.
We can go to that.
It's a meeting in public, it's the cabinet meeting.
6th of March.
And one can make a request to speak, obviously through the clerk.
Yeah.
I have actually made my request to speak as a resident already. I'm just waiting. It's Selwick.
Sarah Cullick. Sarah Cullick is the clerk.
So she's the person. But from my letter from James Brightman, it may still have to go out for consultation for objections and things, and then up to the Secretary of State. So all is not lost yet. Okay.
Right.
I was just going to say that I say they're going to start in October, and it will take a year before they move the people from Cuthbury onto their new housing.
Whereas that seemed as though that was the one at the top of the list, working ahead, moving on quite fast, wasn't it, Cuthbury? A couple of years ago, and it's dropped right back.
So that's the part that's what used to be the old allotments. They will build on that. Well,
anyway. Thanks for that update then. We'll see what comes after.
Oh, I'm just going to say,
Carol?
yes, is the council going to, it's a Wmtc committee going to speak, because we did quite a big report.
Sorry?
We did quite a big report, didn't we, there on the footpaths?
Yes, we did, and we sent our objections in. I haven't seen the agenda for that.
Can we make some representations about that, please?
Comes out tomorrow.
Comes out tomorrow.
So you've only got that week window.
You would have.
It runs out or comes out?
The agenda
Comes out tomorrow.
The agenda has been published now.
Is it?
Yes, it will be on the public, it's on ModGov now, but it will be out in the public domain a week before the meeting, which is tomorrow. But just to tell you, I mean, it's no secret, it's a public paper. Again, it's a paper that I signed off and approved the actual content. The recommendation on it, interesting what was said earlier, Chairman, that the order shall be made, provided for the particular diversion, And then B is if after making the orders, objections are received that cannot be resolved, it shall be submitted to the Secretary of State for a decision. So as somebody said, all is not lost. I mean, there is that proviso. So if objections made, you can't put in a justified reason to throw it out, then it would go to the Secretary of State. On the actual night, I've asked whether they'll do this, but I'll remind them, I've asked them to make a proper presentation of this, because it is very complicated. It might seem like to a number of people quite a trivial matter, but it isn't. It's very, very complicated, and I've asked that they actually do a screen presentation of what's proposed, so that the members of the Cabinet, who haven't necessarily been involved in the planning process, are made fully aware of what the issue is. So hopefully that will happen.
Is that an evening meeting?
Yes, it starts at 6:30.
Well, I should certainly go and listen anyway.
I hope you will speak, Chairman.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I will. Because I know how highly it is in people's minds and thoughts and feelings about this footpath. Okay?
Could we have the link to where we find the papers on this?
Dorset View website.
Oh, it's on that.
It's on
I thought you
Dorset.
said more to something else.
Oh, on vodka is what. But that, if you go onto that, if you go onto the Dorset, sorry,
Dorset
true. If you go on Dorset View, it takes you through, follow the links to vodka, and it gives you the agendas. Yeah.
Can we circulate everybody with that information so we could all have a look at it? That would be useful. Is that all right, Holly? Gosh, this has been a big meeting tonight. We've got the couple of items that we have at the time that we did really for information. You probably know that already. 8 is the planning decisions, and 9 is the planning applications. So we're taking 8, the planning decisions, which is yes, Carol?
Yeah, on the planning decisions, obviously, there's an item for 7 Ashton Close where the town council were altered with the decision made by a planning official, and I understand the clerk would write to Jane Lynch to ask for an explanation, because there was a particular issue on the height of the fence and actually coming out onto the highway, which we understood the fence should only be a metre high. And I just wondered if you could follow that up and get an explanation of this, because it's important that it's a precedent set on this thing.
Yes, what you want.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, so, and then we move on to item 9, the various applications. Accept those. Just to remind everybody, if you could hang on for another half an hour, we have got a little pack of plans to look at. Some simple, some not so simple, but several do need to be done tonight because of the timing. So thanks, everybody. Thank you for your time. I'll go by the gavel.